Nightly Musers, followers of the pod, faithful few and hopeful many. This is Anchor by Spotify. If you haven't heard about it, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's the very platform that allows me to give you what I give you on the nightly. So let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And it gives you the ability to distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so much more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally FREE free. So here's where you come in. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That is ANCHOR.fm to get started. Thank you very much. Peace. Welcome to the Nightly Muse. This is your host, Tinayeshe. And based off of my timing releasing episodes, I feel like I need to just change this to an 11 p.m. thing. No, not really. But still recovering, if you couldn't tell by my voice. So, shout out Lowfly. I got my locks retwisted. Really excited about it. I have beads in my hair. just in two locks have beads in them. And it's fun. I think it looks silly in the right way. But I've been watching this show called Black Love. And let me tell you, there is like a legitimate mourning, grieving process that takes place when you finish something that you really love. And I'm sure they're going to create more seasons, but I mean, each season, 5 seasons, have like 8-ish episodes with at least like 7 or 8 couples in it. So we're talking potentially 56 couples. No, 5 seasons, 40 couples, 35, 40 couples. There we go. Math. Not all of them are black couples, but most of them are, hence the name of the show. And most of them profess a faith of some sort. This is not a Christian. It is not a Christian show, and this is not a Christian recommendation on my end. But I absolutely loved that show, and I've been meaning to talk about it for the past like 5 episodes, but it's better now that I'm talking about it, having just finished it or gotten to current with it. I was talking to my boss the other day, and one of the things that's shown me, I had a friend who used to ask me all the time, it used to piss me off, Hayden, I love you, but man, this drove me up the wall. Are you content in your singleness, Kennedy? Are you content in your singleness? And I'd be like, are you content in your singleness? Shut up, Hayden. It used to bother me because I deep down knew that I wasn't, but I also felt like it was an unfair question. Not because it had nothing to do with how I actually felt about the answer, and as much as it had to do with like my genuine answer of, if God told me, hey, you're going to be single for the rest of your life, would I be happy about it off the jump? No. But I'd fall in line because I believe in him and who, like, what he has for me, and that his ways are better. And so there's a part of me that felt like, I mean, the answer is kind of yes, but no, like, I know what you're asking me, but I also don't know if I'm going to be single for the rest of my life. So it felt like you're asking me a question that's a hypothetical. But anyway, the real question was, are you content in your singleness? And the honest answer was no. But it always was frustrating because it always felt like it was always people in that were in relationships that would ask those type of questions or give that type of advice. And it's like, dude, dude, take advantage of your single time. And I'm like, look, I know singleness very, very well. It's been 23 years now of my life. And so trust me, I know it. But there was a reality of like, was I taking advantage of it? No, I wasn't. And getting to the space where I am now feels a lot different from where I used to be. And that has been a clear kind of testament or like notifier that I am more content in my singleness than I used to be, or I can see the difference from when I wasn't content to where I am now. And you guys have something to do with that. Last night's episode about Davidson feeling more like my people has something to do with that. Learning to be in the moment has something to do with that. And just counseling, obviously, my family, sisters, all that. Learning to control what you can control and kind of open your hands in the areas that you can't has been a huge help. But the biggest kind of exclamation point in that part of my life has been being able to take in content that had to do with marriage. It used to kind of frustrate me because I'm like, I need to not think about like weddings and Valentine's Day and weddings. Weddings, beautiful occasions. Valentine's Day, sure, it's awesome. But those are like two reminders of how single you are. And I used to like have a love-hate relationship with, I play at weddings. It's like a kind of side hustle. If you're getting married soon, hit your boy up because I'm kind of nice with it. But it's an area that I had a love-hate relationship with because it was like, there's nothing more beautiful. There's nothing that makes me more excited about getting married one day that also simultaneously reminds me of how far I am seemingly from that actual day coming. And so part of me loved it and part of me was like, get me out of here. And I've been listening to Tim Ross, as I told you about. He's a pastor in, I think, Texas, Embassy City Church. And he has a podcast called The Basement with Tim Ross. And specifically his sermons. So if you have children listening, this would be a good time to not have them listening if you're not ready for this. It's not... To me, it's not inappropriate, but you may not appreciate it. So this would be a good time to move the children out of the way. I feel like I've warned you enough now. So the first sermon I ever had or listened to by him was a video sermon called Help, I'm Horny. And to this day, it is the greatest sermon I've ever heard on sexuality and like sexual sin, all of that stuff. And for me, somebody who has struggled with it, you can bring the children back. Maybe not. I'll give you a clear determinant or clear go ahead to say the children can be back in the room. But anyway, there was a moment, like first time I've ever heard a penis, vagina, like the anatomical names of these things that are bodies, like said from the pulpit, and actually talking about like real issues. For better or worse, I never really had the sex talk with my parents. And so that was kind of hard. And in some ways feeling like my sex education came from porn. To be honest, like It wasn't really a conversation that was had openly in the house. And the only framework that I had to have that conversation was through something that I knew was wrong and didn't feel comfortable telling them. And so, because I was afraid and knew that I was in sin, et cetera, et cetera. But for better or worse, I knew that I was learning things, seeing things from a faulty, adulterated image. And so he did a great job of like, no, like, if we don't have the conversation in here, they're having the conversation outside. And if the world is always influencing that conversation, then we're always going to be behind the eight ball. I think that's the phrase, behind the eight ball. Maybe. We're always going to be behind. And never influencing, never impacting, because we're always 1 step, 7 steps, 30 steps behind a conversation that should be had because the Bible talks about it. And so anyway, this is a long aside. Tim Ross, since then, I've always been interested in him because he's very raw in his content. Not a lot of pastors will name a sermon title, "Help, I'm Horny." Okay, now you can bring the kids back. But anyway, I ended up listening to some other sermons of his, and this one was called Upset the Vows. And it's this whole like 8-week sermon thing on series on marriage. And I'm still not done with it. But to be able to listen to something like that for me has been a huge testament to, excuse me, sorry. It's been a huge testament to how I've grown, because I had a book. I still have the book. It's called Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. I think that's the order. Yeah, Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. You know, the logical order of things, by Ben Stewart. Love the book. But when I got to I think it was the engaged part, I couldn't read it anymore. Because I'm like, now all I can think about is a phase of my life that I am nowhere near close to. And so I stopped reading it. I haven't read it in so long that I probably have to read it over, because it was a great book. But it was constantly reminding me of something that I wanted that I didn't have, and I was angry with God about it. But this time, listening to Tim Ross's sermon, watching this TV series, I've just been like amazed at the wisdom. One, the wisdom of all of these different couples, some Christian, some not. And two, the similarities in the keys to success, the need for communication, learning to respect each other. Just really, really beautiful. Overcoming infidelity, learning to fight for the relationship. Some having come from failed marriages before, divorces, some not, and dealing with it within their marriage that's happened the entire time. Learning to address trauma, understanding how past trauma impacts the current relationship. And it was heartwarming. It was so sweet. It was incredible. And it felt like, man, I should have been taking notes the entire... I'd watch it again. I mean, it was so beautiful to see. 98% of the couples were Black. And that, again, isn't to say that, it is not a deal breaker if I end up with a Black girl or not. You know what I mean? That isn't that's not how I view the world or my desires. But a lot of times with representation or lack thereof, you tend to settle for what you kind of you assume what's possible and what's not possible based off of your life. So people will make kind of annoying comments or ask kind of annoying questions of, Kennedy, do you like white girls? Or Kennedy, are you even into Black girls or whatever? Very it's like one or the other, black and white, very, for lack of a better phrase. Because the assumption is like, well, it's a surprise that you're not really into black girls. And it's like, well, have you really seen me in a community where there's a lot of them? Not to say that that's the only determinant, but I think that plays a large factor into attraction that people don't really account for. Of course, most white people would marry white people because they spend most of their time around white people. But even if they didn't, they're in the majority. So they have, they're also viewed differently in a hierarchy of attraction, right? But anyway, that's a different conversation. To when I was at my high school, I only had I never had a black teacher. Our assistant principal at the time is a principal now, black. But that was it. I never had a black teacher. The only black superior that I had was a coach. And so it kind of perpetuates this like stereotype of like black people only occupying spaces of like athletics or entertainment. And it was an amazing experience to have Coach Rob, knowing that he was unashamedly Christian and also unapologetically black, married to a black person, and feeling represented in that way in that time, because you don't get to see that exemplified outside of like my home. And conversation for another day, or you can listen to Life in Between if you want that content of like African and blackness are not the same thing. They're obviously in a country where you're seen as black first. That's the common denominator, but at the end of the day, culturally, we're very different. And I'm growing up in kind of both cultures. And so it can be hard sometimes to feel like, all right, do I even fit in here? What would make the most sense for a quote unquote life partner? You ask those questions. And so to be able to watch a show where they're talking about it all, sex life, struggles with adultery, how to make it work, learning how to compromise and sacrifice, and all of these things, struggles with fertility, struggles with like same category, but like IVF and all this stuff. And because I am into some of those things in terms of like the medical world, like that was interesting and intriguing to me. But also just learning like, okay, in one relationship, the wife was the breadwinner, and another one, the husband was. All of these different relational dynamics are in play. And so one of the most intriguing things was just how they were talking about the realities of having children, how that changes the relational dynamic and the work or effort that it takes to still prioritize the marriage first. How some of them failed at that, and some of them like overcoming major health crises. There was one on the pandemic that was so sad and heartbreaking, where a couple lost a 5-year-old to COVID and extra complications that came as a result of COVID, and it was just horrible. But through all this, them just giving each other, like, they're giving game. They are giving so much game for people that may be in it. The couple that does this docu-series of sorts is they're newlyweds. Not newlyweds, they have kids now, but when they started off, I think they were newlyweds. And all these like famous couples, I'm surprised the Obamas haven't gotten on there yet. I hope that happens. But it's been so beautiful to just see. They'll have like really old couples, that have been together for like multiple decades, and then like an old couple that found each other, both remarried, but like in their 60s, and they've only been married for 15 years only. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see that. And I don't know. I mean, even listening to Tim Ross's sermons, I think my mindset has changed of just taking all of that as I find them kind of naturally. I just kind of stumbled on the TV thing and Hulu and Tim Ross. I mean, I was passively taking in his content. Now I'm an active consumer. But as I continue to take it in, I'm just learning to it's all learning material. It's all opportunities to grow and become a better man on this side of relationship, or marriage rather, because I am very hopeful and believing that that's in my future. But it doesn't feel like I'm constantly like teasing myself with something as much as it is like being the youngest of three, 2 older sisters and myself. I learned a lot by observation. You learn what not to do or how to not get caught if you're more mischievous. And so I've gotten good at learning by what I see. And so this is kind of just the next step in that. It's like I don't have to be in a relationship to learn like healthy relationship tools or skills or whatever. Like it's just good to intake that content and take the wisdom while you're single and not have to learn from pain, because I'm going to learn from that anyway. That's coming. But at least on this side, I can learn and prepare myself in my singleness and be hopeful and get even more hopeful as a direct consequence of the things that I've been taking in. So it's fun. It's been good. And it's been a healthy experience for me thus far. And so this is the Black Love episode. I was hoping to be more animated, but my current nose, sinus, mouth, throat thing is not allowing for that. But it was all black everything, yo. All black everything. It was fantastic. Even if you're a white person. I wonder what it would be like to watch something where it's predominantly black people the entire time. You know what I mean? Like, it's in the same way that it would probably be a new experience for a white person to see that. I think it is a very, like, refreshing experience for me as a black person to see we're getting screen time. It's not a sports biopic. It's not a slavery reimagination or whatever, you know. It's celebrating black love, and that is what I needed as a black Zimbabwean American, soon to be in a relationship, hopefully. Young man who's just trying to figure it all out. And so here I am. Here you are. There you are. I'm Shout out Love Fly.